So, good afternoon, everyone. Please, can I have confirmation? Well, I have had confirmation that the live stream has started. To make sure I'm myself on mute. So, welcome to this meeting of the Cabinet. In addition to the Cabinet members and other councillors present in the room, we also have some councillors joining our meeting remotely. This really reflects our continued concern about the COVID status in the county and in the country. I will now check that those remote can hear us and we them. We have Cabinet members joining remotely. Councillor Crockett.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I can hear and see you.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey.
Yes, Leader, I can see and hear you. Thank you.
Councillor Harrington.
Yes, Leader, I can hear and see you. Thank you.
And Councillor Davies.
Yes, Leader, I can see and hear you.
Thank you. Cabinet support members. Councillor Hardwick.
Good afternoon, Leader. I can see and hear you clearly.
And Councillor Hay.
Yes, good afternoon, Leader. I can see and hear you.
Councillor Bartlett. I think she probably has sent apologies. And Councillor Ginman.
Good afternoon, Leader. I can see and hear you.
Thank you. Group leaders or their representatives. As follows, Councillor Terry James.
Good afternoon, Leader. I can see and hear you clearly.
Thank you. It's probably a bit snowy where you are, Councillor James.
No, the sun is shining beautiful.
Oh, good, good. Councillor Lester.
Yes, good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. We can hear you loud and clearly. Thank you.
Councillor Matthews.
Yeah, good afternoon, Leader. I can see and hear you.
Thank you. Councillor Fagan.
Good afternoon. I can see and hear you. Thank you.
And I imagine Councillor Ginman, you're representing the Independents for Herefordshire.
Yes, thank you. I'll do the double act.
Thank you. Councillor Howells.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I can hear and see you. I'm afraid I am actually suffering from COVID. Breathing difficulties, as you can tell, and my throat and voice is nearly gone. But if I have to leave, please forgive me. I'm sure you'll understand. But I am here at the moment.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Howells. And finally, Councillor Swinglehurst.
Good afternoon, Leader. Yes, I can hear and see you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will now formally open the meeting. The agenda papers and other relevant information for this meeting are available for public viewing on the Herefordshire Council website. The Council is streaming this meeting live on the Herefordshire Council YouTube channel and making a recording. To ensure that recording quality is maintained, please speak as clearly as possible and keep background noise to a minimum. Microphones should be muted when you're not speaking, and please ensure that mobile phones and other devices are turned to silent. Can I check that everybody can hear me? Do I need to have the microphone on, Jen? Yeah, it's best to have it on. Is it? Okay. Others are permitted to film, photograph and record our public meetings, provided that it does not disrupt the business of the meeting. As we move through the agenda, in addition to discussion by Cabinet members, I will invite group leaders or their representatives in turn to provide views and questions from their group on each item. And I will run through them in the same order as I used for introducing them at the beginning of this meeting. Where appropriate, I will also call on scrutiny chairpersons to comment on behalf of their committee. Voting will be undertaken by a show of hands in the room. Only Cabinet members physically present in the room may vote. In terms of today's agenda, I propose to change the advertised running order to take the item on Herefordshire Children's Services Transformation first, as this is the item which probably has the greatest interest, and then to the delivery plan, then the communication strategy, and finishing with the Market Town investment plans. I trust this change in order will not inconvenience anybody, and a recording is of course available on the YouTube channel. Have any apologies been notified to the clerk? Sarah?
I've apologies from Councillor Tyler.
Thank you. Any other apologies? No. Declarations of interest. Are there any Schedule 1, Schedule 2 or other interest for items on the agenda today? I see none. Item 3, minutes to approve and sign the minutes of the meeting held on the 24th of February 2022. No matters of accuracy have been notified to the monitoring officer. Cabinet members, are you content that the minutes are an accurate record? Thank you. Fourth item is to receive any questions from members of the public. We have received 5 questions from members of the public for this meeting, and a response has been published as a supplement to the agenda papers. Those members of the public who have submitted questions have the opportunity to submit a written supplementary or to join the meeting to ask their questions live. I will now ask the clerk to confirm if a supplemental question is to be asked for each of the questions. The first questioner is Mr. Wood. Has he submitted a supplemental question?
Yes, he has in writing, Leader. He says, thank you for your response to my original question. However, I would like assurances from the Cabinet and Councillor Harrington that you will consult wheelchair and mobility scooter users when taking accessibility considerations into account for the market towns as part of the MTIPs.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I'm quite happy to give Mr. Wood that assurance.
Thank you. The second is from Mr. Mackay. And I don't know whether he has yes, he has a supplemental question as well. So if we could have that read, please.
Yes. He says, the council websites you make reference to pinpoint the locations, which may be okay for a small play area, but less so for large or linear open space land. And I ask if you would ask officers to explore the possibility of showing the shape, area or boundary on the highways and PROW map as part of developing an integrated approach.
Now this is a reply possibly from Councillor Davies and possibly from Councillor Harrington.
Yeah, I'm going to pass over to Councillor Harrington. I think this is a slight mistake. This isn't my particular area.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, I'm happy to give that assurance to Mr. Mackay. I had already given that direction, but we will look at that precisely along the lines that he has suggested.
Thank you. The third question is from Ms. Cairns, and I don't know whether yet we do not have a supplemental from her, so I'll move on to the next one, which is Mr. Wilmont,
No.
and we have no question from him either. And finally, the fifth question is from Ms. Albright, and she has submitted a supplemental question.
She has, Leader, and I believe she's joining us remotely to ask the question.
Ms. Albright, are you there? Yes. See you on the big screen anyway. Ms. Albright, would you like to ask your supplemental question? Thank you.
Leader, thank you very much for the detailed reply and update. The lobby group would like to reiterate that the moratorium is actually harming the wider county and our communities in all sorts of ways, not simply the construction sector, jobs and the delivery of new homes. Having attended yesterday's Nutrient Management Board meeting, it is now clear that any progress from the agencies, our neighbouring authorities, the NGOs and the agricultural sector remains slow, uncertain and unlikely to deliver river and soil restoration and end the moratorium. The lobby group would therefore implore Herefordshire Council to now seek, embrace and support any privately delivered nutrient and ecology betterment projects from businesses, individuals and charities such as the Wildlife Trust. Do you agree that creating a supportive, dynamic and agile environment where neutrality and betterment can be welcomed and secured from innovative private projects alongside the wetlands, all of which will be paid for by the construction sector, is the most viable way for us all to take control over this terrible situation and finally begin the long process of ecological restoration alongside sustainable growth? As always, the Herefordshire Construction Industry Lobby Group are very happy to help find ways to accelerate this.
Thank you, Ms. Albright. Councillor Harrington, I don't know whether you were in a position to provide a detailed reply?
I think so. Once again, I thank Ms. Albright and the Hereford Construction Industry Lobby Group for all the work and the lobbying that they're doing on behalf of the builders who are, as we know, developers suffering huge financial losses and implications as a result of the moratorium. We're very happy to work with all groups such as them and such as the Wildlife Trust, but we keep coming back to this issue that the statutory agencies are the ones that put the pressure on us in terms of being the planning, the permission giver. And if we're giving permission against advice that they've given us, we are the ones at risk. And we have tried to mitigate, well, we have mitigated that by bringing in the wetlands, of which we now have, I think, bought 3. We certainly have bought 2. We have planning permission for 1. We will start in, hopefully, early May, start trading with developers on the phosphates, providing betterment where those sewerage works are going through wetlands. It keeps coming back to this issue that we're all lobbying our government agencies and our MPs to make sure that they are taking an active role in this. And unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be, as you've said, happening as quickly as we'd like. And I know that the work that Councillor Swinglehurst and others are doing on the Nutrient Management Board has been proving exceptionally frustrating. We've tried, in a sense, to take this out of the hands of the agencies that, in a sense, control this by supporting a water protection zone. In the meantime, we will continue to work with you, Ms. Albright, to do our very best.
Thank you, Councillor Harrington. It's a very significant issue, obviously, for the whole county, and all sorts of interested parties in this. Farmers, tourism, builders, environmentalists, we're all very concerned to find a solution to this. I'll move on then to item 5, which is to receive any questions from councillors, which we haven't received. So I will then move to the next, or the substantive item of this Cabinet meeting is the Herefordshire Children's Services Transformation, and it is to request the drawdown from the Financial Resilience Reserve, a total of £11.49 million to support the ongoing delivery of the Children's Services Improvement Plan. This item begins on page 265 of the agenda pack, and I'll pass to Councillor Toynbee, Cabinet Member Children and Families, for an introduction to this item. Councillor Toynbee.
Thank you very much. Yes, good afternoon everyone. Yes, as you said, Leader, this item is my request to Cabinet to invest money from our Financial Resilience Reserve, 11.49 million of it, to invest in our continuing strengthening and renewing of our work with our families, to enable the people who work for us to do their best work. And as you see, the recommendation is to do it in 2 parts, with 5 million this April and another 6.49 million from July. And before that comes to us in July, we'll hear plenty of details about the progress that's been made up till then. A lot of time and energy has gone into preparing these documents for you. Thank you for reading them. There's a lot in there. I'm very pleased that so many colleagues came in onto the various presentations and conversations about this investment. I'm very grateful for all the questions and challenges and support. As you know, we asked our Finance Officer, our Chief Executive and the Director of Children's Services a couple of times to go away and come back with a little more detail or a little more context. And that was extremely helpful. And I'm very grateful to all of them for making sure that we invest in a wise and focused way. I know group leaders have also had one-to-one conversations with our senior leadership on the details of this. So there have been plenty of opportunities for members to engage with this, which I'm really pleased about. I know this amount of investment is a huge ask. I'd like to have brought it to you a few months ago. The fact is, we didn't have a clear enough idea of exactly what was needed a few months ago. It took a lot of work last year to discern where we needed to invest, and since then we've seen a large increase in pressure and referrals for a combination of reasons. So on top of investing in the future, we've been busy making sure that we've learnt what we needed to learn and to address backlogs. And there's been a lot of good work on this. In your papers, you have a breakdown of what the investments we've made so far have gone on, not just what our future plans are. And that's in Appendix A, as you can see. As you know, it's nearly a year since we first decided to step up and be really bold and ambitious with our plans for our children's services. And that was the right decision. I really appreciate the fact that colleagues and our senior leaders in the council have been not just supporting this, but driving it. Investing around £10 million is fairly typical of the amount that councils end up investing when they're facing the challenges that we're facing, particularly an improvement notice. It is a lot of money, but why would we not do it? If ever there was the time to invest in people in Herefordshire, it's now. It's been difficult over the years to think long term, given the way that funding settlements work, but we're an administration that thinks long term, and that particularly implies to children because that's future generations. And we can see in the item under the delivery plan that we are thinking long term. When councils go through the sort of deep and lasting change that we're undertaking, it typically takes around 3 years. So we've had a year of probing, diagnosing, analysing, reflecting. Now we're consolidating and stabilising, seeing more clearly, and it's really important that we keep the momentum going. We must ensure that 2 years from now we're settled into our renewed services and we have the energy and the resources to keep on working to the highest possible standards into the future. So this investment is an investment in people. It's all about people, supporting our workforce, bringing in more employees to join us, strengthening our relationships with families, working more effectively with our partners. It's an investment in the future that will have knock-on benefits for the whole council, not just the Children's Directorate. It's a great opportunity for us to put our money where our mouth is, to make Herefordshire a place where families thrive. Thank you for your support. I'll hand over to Darryl in case there are any particular things he'd like to highlight for us.
Thank you, Councillor Toynbee. Good afternoon. So Councillor Toynbee has outlined the request. I won't take you through the chronology of events that led to the report and the recommendations before you today. It's been acknowledged and discussed in previous Cabinet and Council meetings that there is a need for significant improvement in both practice and performance in children's social care services, and that concerns have been raised over a number of years by Ofsted and of course in recent High Court judgments. The Council expressed its strong commitment to improving children's social care services last year and acknowledged that this was a programme of activity that would take several years to deliver the much improved outcomes that we want to see and the ambition to become a child-friendly county of the future. Core transformation of the service is expected to take 3 years before a sustained and sustainable improvement is achieved. Last year the focus was very much on stabilising the service and on developing a much better understanding of the extent of the challenge and the practice to be improved. Right now the focus is on improving practice and performance through gradually reducing caseloads, increased levels of management oversight and case supervision, establishing clear practice standards, working with other agencies and of course working with families. We are starting to see improving performance in a number of areas, but it takes time to ensure that this is embedded, becomes our norm and consistently leads to improved outcomes for children and families. Next year the focus will be on consolidating the improvements that we expect to see this year so that we move to a point where we have confidence that improvement is embedded and the difference that we make for families is evident in all that we do. You will note from the paper that the service has seen a significant rise in demand in recent months, which stretched our capacity and hindered our ability to achieve some improvement activity last year. This is in part due to the improvement activity already undertaken, and we are seeing increased levels of confidence from our partner agencies and from referrers, and may also include some increased demand resulting from the COVID pandemic and as a consequence of recent high-profile national cases, the impact of which has been seen in children's services across the country. Additional social work and management capacity was added to respond to this. Over time, a sustainable staffing structure needs to be achieved, but for the year ahead, we shall need to maintain a higher level of capacity in order to respond to the increased levels of demand whilst also driving improvement at pace. This proposal and the resources requested address the immediate and medium-term demands on the service and also start to build the service of the future, for example, by better supporting our newly qualified social workers and creating a system for improved levels of personal and professional development and for career progression, so that we retain the many very loyal and hard-working colleagues that we have and improve our ability to recruit new members to our team. In addition to the request for investment in the year 2022-23, Cabinet is asked to note an anticipated indicative increase in the base budget for the year 23-24. An independent evaluation of the proposal and the focus on ongoing investment will be undertaken during Q1 and the findings presented to Cabinet in due course. Any requested changes to the base budget for 23-24 and subsequent years will be developed through the mid-term financial planning processes this year and be subject to the normal governance and scrutiny that this process has. I'm happy to support Councillor Toynbee in addressing any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Councillor Toynbee and Mr. Freeman. Can I start just with an observation which has a couple of questions linked to it? So, there used to be quite a focus, I think, on increasing numbers of looked after children, and they were a huge expense on the council, and we were quite concerned about that. And I note in the report that yes, there's an increase in those numbers, but there seemed to be a couple of positive signs at the time. Because under paragraph 3.4, it says historically the rate of referrals in Herefordshire has been lower than both England and statistical neighbours. And then under assessments, there's a similar observation saying that we were below statistical neighbours in assessments. So there are two areas where seemingly good progress was being made, which contrasted with looked after children. So I appreciate your observations perhaps on those figures, but it's a bit counterintuitive somehow, but perhaps you'll provide some observations on that. The other aspect is that yes, the number of looked after children has been high in Herefordshire, and no one has ever been able to give me an answer as to explain why that is the case. And bearing in mind the potential cost of the council of those services, part of the solution long term is potentially to understand why that figure is there. And I don't know whether that is your hope that part of this work will provide an answer to that question, or those questions. So answers on the back of a postcard, please. That may be more like a long essay. But,
Thank you, Leader. I'll do my best. In terms of historical data, you're quite right in the report. It points to lower rates than were experienced in comparable local authorities, so our statistical neighbours and the England average in a number of areas. In some part that may be due that actually Herefordshire is quite unique even to some of our statistical neighbours in that it's a very rural county with a relatively low density of population. So there aren't any statistical neighbours that have a very close likeness to Herefordshire. So finding comparators is quite challenging. Historically, some of the practice in the service would suggest that there was perhaps an over-reliance that community and early help services would pick up some of the referrals. So I think so what you saw coming through statutory service might reflect over-optimism that some of that work was being picked up elsewhere, or indeed that at one point it was being picked up quite correctly, and then over time that changed. The significant rise in demand and referral that we started to see in the autumn, my professional judgment is that that's directly as a result of the improvement activity that we've been taking, and particularly the changes that we've made to the multi-agency safeguarding hub. Our referrers, particularly schools, police and health colleagues, state a higher level of confidence in decision making and the consistency of decision making in the MASH. So having only joined the council in the last 6 months, I'm probably not best qualified to speak to some of the history and in terms of some of the practice and behaviour in the past. What my focus very much on now is dealing with the here and now and making sure we've got a service that's fit for the future. In terms of higher rates of looked after children than comparative local authorities, it's true, that's still the case. The numbers of children coming into our care are not significantly high, but there's a group of children in our care that have been there for quite some years, and in actual fact, my observation is not so many of them return home for all sorts of reasons, for lots of good reasons in many cases. So the net number is slowly increasing at the minute, and we're at around about 380 children in our care at this point. Part of this proposal, through improving practice and through strengthening our edge of care services, should enable us to further reduce the numbers of children coming into our care, but actually also increase the numbers of children that we might be able to return home to their families where it's safe and appropriate to do so.
Thank you very much. So I'll pass over anybody else, any questions, comments? I'm trying to look at the screen, see if there are any hands up or anybody in the room.
I can make a comment.
Yeah, Councillor Chance, yeah, and then Councillor Crockett's hand up as well.
Yeah, I can make a comment just to be brief. I think this is a really significant investment in our children's services on top of what is already a significant budget. But for me, I think that this shows the importance that we're placing on really addressing the issues that have come to light in recent years, and that can only be welcomed. And I think it also shows that there are no shortcuts to looking after vulnerable children, and that attempts to, in the past, over many years, to make savings in this area have resulted in a situation where, we do need to make this investment at this point. And so I think it's a vital decision, and I'm grateful to everyone working in the service to address these long-standing issues. And I'm particularly happy to hear what you were saying there around the way that this investment will enable us to address issues around recruitment and retention of staff and continuing professional development of staff, because it's all about having good staff working to support families who are struggling. And that is something that social services countrywide have been struggling with, and I think that making this investment will enable us to strengthen further and build a really strong team. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Crockett.
Sorry.
Thank you, Leader. Similarly, along Councillor Chang's lines, while I was shocked to receive this current implementation plan financial request, I also understand that the only way forward to ensure the protection and support of the children requiring our services is to have a robust and complete plan. This commitment will facilitate this delivery. We have in the past had unanimous support from full council for the implementation of the improvement strategy, and I would therefore hope and ask all members to understand this necessary commitment. Happy children, hopefully, lead to happy adults. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crockett. Councillor Harvey.
Yes, thank you, Leader. This is a massive investment, and it's more than double the investment that we were anticipating as we entered into and approved the budget for the coming year. I think it just brings home the scale of the work that needs to go on in the Directorate and the importance of that work in terms of making sure that we get this right and that we build a firm foundation off which our children's services can have a stable operation for the future. As a councillor since 2011, it's always horrified me the demand for children's social care in Herefordshire, where a deeply rural, quite sparsely populated county on the edge of England, and yet we have deep areas of multiple sorts of deprivation in pockets in our county, which create huge social problems, and really we need to work. This is not a problem that is solely down to the Children's Directorate and Children's Services to solve. this is going to involve public health, this is going to involve education, this is going to involve all sorts of other services. We need to think about how we plan and deliver housing for the future, how we grow and support our communities. This is a county-wide initiative, in a sense, that we're really going to have to get joined up on. If we're going to, get it right. And, I'd just like to, publicly seek assurance that we're going to be closely project managing this end to end, so that we can be clear how the money's being spent, where it's being spent, and where it's being spent across the council. We're doing that in a joined up way, so that we're really getting value for that money, and every service area that's involved in contributing to delivering on the overall plan is cited on the full plan and can see where what they're doing contributes to the overall objectives that we're seeking to achieve.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Councillor Davies.
Yeah, thanks for that. The difficult one, because you're really sad to see, this investment needed to get us back to a point where we're able to operate effectively. And echoing what Councillor Harvey says, so sad to see that in Herefordshire, a rural county, we have this many interventions to make. It's absolutely mind-blowing and devastating to see, but this is what austerity looks like. This is what budget cutting looks like. You only need to look at some of the budgets to see the decrease and then the increase in children's services. And I personally want to applaud Darryl for, from my perspective, being the first person to turn around and go, no, wait, stop. This is about me coming up with a plan that is properly costed, that will get us back onto the right train to be able to look after our young people. So though it's scary figures, I have had a number of assurances from Darryl that this is appropriate. This is what other councils have to do in order to bring their children's services up to the standards that our young people deserve. So I want to applaud both Darryl and Councillor Toynbee for the courage of bringing such a paper before us. And you've got my full support, you know that. And I would hope that everybody in the room accepts that this is the type of investment that's needed right now.
Thank you. Councillor Hay.
Thank you. Yeah, just to echo those thoughts of Councillor Davis, I'd also like to extend my thanks to Councillor Toynbee and to Darryl Freeman for all the hard work and blood, sweat and tears that have gone into this really, really, really difficult challenge of bringing this to us today. And yes, there are too many looked after children in our county, and we need to make sure that this investment is going towards prevention, and I know a lot of it will be, because over the next few years we can then ensure that we haven't got children coming into care. Working within the directorate, I've been so heartened by the cultural change that I've seen since Darryl Freeman was appointed as Director of Children's Services. And we've seen an approach of honesty and clarity all along the way. And so I say I'd like to thank him for always providing that, because that makes such a difference. So for the next 3 years and all the hard work that's I think Councillor Toynbee did allude to it at the beginning, and when she was talking to us about the really good attendance at members' briefings regarding this transformation paper. And I think going forwards, it's going to be so crucial that we have support from colleagues across party, because we all need to be working together here to continue on this improvement journey. And I just urge, that we are all working together and making sure that we are providing the best for children and families in our county.
Thank you, Councillor Hay. Councillor Howes, this hasn't been to your scrutiny committee, but I wonder whether you wanted to say a word, even with your limited voice this afternoon.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll do my best. I'm accustomed to not be able to speak very well. I will try and make myself understood. Yeah, as you say, we haven't had a chance to review with scrutiny yet, but I've certainly discussed the principle of the proposals with Councillor Hewitt, the Vice Chair, and we've already expressed in principle our support to the Chief Exec and DCS and to Cabinet Member for our support in principle for these proposals, and would like to also say thanks and give credit to the lead member, Councillor Toynbee, and Chief Exec Paul Walker and Darryl DCS for the hard work and courage and commitment they put in putting this plan together, because it's clearly very much needed. The points from the report I particularly like to pick up are that I note that the realism in showing that it will take 3 years timescale to achieve a sustained and sustainable level of improvement, and a budget clearly needed to do that. That it obviously clearly and specifically addresses the key Ofsted priority actions, in particular the obviously clear need for increased capacity, and without it we certainly weren't going to achieve the improvement plan. We were already of that persuasion. We also accept the reasoning why it was not feasible to produce these proposals in time for the main budget consideration, but we do strongly welcome and support this clearly necessary investment recommendation now, having already expressed concern that the current approved budget, especially when seeing how it was broken down and effectively how little of it was actually addressing the improvement, and it did seem to be insufficient. So really pleased to see that we've actually come forward with a much more realistic budget than frankly was the case up to now. However, we would like to ask that regular updates to members on details of where the money is spent is actually given to members on how it's going to over time and what impact it is having on the improvement plan, and they should be formally scheduled and delivered. We'd like to reiterate the point that Councillor Harvey made, that the Cabinet Member, that it really is critical that we ensure good project management and can show how the money is being spent where and the improvement that's being made. And I'd like to add to say, as a start to show that, I think it's not just myself, Vice Chair, and our committee members who are not really clear at the moment on how the relatively small sums of money, but important as they were, grants that we've had from DfE to get us started, isn't really clear on how much received, how much was spent, and that some of it maybe is still unspent. So it'd be a really good start if we were to be totally clear on that. And when we submit these recommendations, which hopefully will be passed by Cabinet today, to Council, that we include in submission and presentation just how the money we've already had, what was received, how it was spent, what impact it had, so that we can set a good start to showing that we will be fully accountable for how the money's being spent to the members and public. Thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Councillor Howes. Communication is obviously really important. Obviously, we as an administration will be watching how the money is being spent and making sure there's some proper returns. I think we need to probably take away from this meeting just some thoughts on how we might communicate with members. I think we'll come back to you with that, as well as the communication with the Scrutiny Committee. That's all very relevant. The money that's come from the DfE, I can't answer that one. I think perhaps Mr. Freeman is able to give a response to that.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Howes, for your support. The DfE grant was in total £1.7 million during the financial year ending today. It was time limited. It needed to be spent by today, as is the nature of government grants. Most of that was used to support increased improvement activity in terms of being able to do some stuff sooner than we would have been able to do otherwise, including scoping some of the development of the early help services that we expect to do during the year ahead, and also to do some work with service users around developing an engagement strategy. The fact that we will be subject to the final tally will be about £6,000 underspent on that whole amount. So that's a significant amount of money that has gone into children's services improvement with support and confidence in the Department for Education. And further financial support will be available during the coming year through the sector-led improvement programme. So the DfE, again, we're negotiating with them at the moment what additional support we might get through that programme for the year ahead.
I think Chief Executive to comment on this as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Leader, for me. And I think just to respond to Councillor Harvey's point around the assurance of how the investment is to be managed, and that we'll be adopting the very best principles of programme and project management as is adopted across the council. You know, this investment and this project will fall in line with that form of management arrangements, and we will be reporting back to Cabinet on a quarterly basis and on a bi-monthly basis back to all members in line with the improvement plan. So yes, those plans are in place to continue the level of reporting back for which we've set a new tone around reporting back, and also the new tone that's been set in terms of the openness and transparency for which we've presented this detail to all members, and we would want to continue in that light. So yes, it's a must do that we will continue that discipline so that progress can be tracked and issues highlighted where there are issues, and that alternative strategies where it's needed are introduced. I think the third thing to bear in mind, and the report does allude to it, is that one of the things I'm keen to introduce and are just finalising the terms of reference for is an independent assurance review and challenge process for the proposals. And as it says in the report, those will be reported back to Cabinet as part of the report to seek release of the Tranche 2 funding arrangements. And that will look particularly at the content of the improvement programme and the funds that have been utilised, and delivering the original objectives that we set ourselves to achieve, whether that's around the recruitment and retention of permanent staff, the effective management and oversight of supervision, and the ongoing impact on quality assurance, and not least of which around benchmarking and referencing other local authorities who have achieved the same level of improvement, and looking across the country about examples of good practice for which we can learn from. So I'm keen and anxious that that take place. I think it's an important part of the due diligence and assurance framework that we put in place, and that members, would want to see that as part of the commitment we all have to delivering the improvements, and the investment that we're setting aside is actually delivering that level of investment, that level of improvement that we set out to do. So that, that's the commitment in terms of managing the project, and an independent assurance review that will provide it back to members as part of the report to release the second tranche of money and seek approval for that. Thank you.
Paul, thank you for that assurance. I think benchmarking is really important. There's a number of social workers referred to in this report that will be required long term. I'm interested to see how we fare against other councils, taking into account obviously Mr. Freeman's point that we're rural, and so slightly different demands might apply. I'll move on now to the group leaders. As I said, I'll go through the list in order as at the beginning of the meeting. So, Councillor James.
Thank you, Chair. I just obviously the financial situation that the council finds itself in, as far as children's services are concerned, has to be supported. My concern is about the culture within children's services and safeguarding, which was bad and doesn't appear to be getting any better. We are in the situation partly because of lack of funding, but also the culture that existed within safeguarding, which has been highlighted by Judge Keenan and other judges. And that's what I'm keen to see, the change in which the families are dealt with within this council.
Yes, a very good point about culture, Councillor James. That's what we need to change, and I think we are moving in that area already. I know you're suggesting it's still not very good, or hasn't changed. I think it probably is progressing. Small steps, but we're moving ahead on that. Councillor Lester.
Thank you. And listening to the comments of the Cabinet, I wouldn't disagree with many of the things that have been said. The Conservatives, we note the report, and from the outset, we stress that protecting children is of paramount importance. And if there's this one thing that the council does well, it's got to be looking after the well-being of children at every level. So we note the request for further investment. This is because of systemic issues, but it's also because of ongoing issues. And we note the drive to try and address those. I think, though, it's important to see the context of this issue in view of the funding and where we've come from. And in the last administration, the council was spending 27 million. In the last few years, this has increased and increased and increased to 41 million pounds, and that's not including the 5.8 million pounds improvement to address we're looking at an increase of a base budget by 4.5, and now we're also on top of that looking at an increase of 11 million pounds. So these sums are huge increases, whichever way you look at it. My initial question about the report is, because of the increases in the sums of money involved and the challenges, members are briefed, and I think it's really good that council officers and cabinet spend a lot of time briefing members. But my question would be, if a member of the public read this report asking for more money, is it clear to them what the challenges are? Now, that's not a criticism of the report, that's just a question for moving forward, because these are vast sums of money and increases, and so the challenge is this report explaining fully why those pressures are there? Naturally, we find it frustrating that these issues weren't addressed through the scrutiny process. We note that Councillor Howells and the Children's Scrutiny weren't involved in these discussions because the documents weren't there, but they were briefed on the fact that the improvement plan was going to be funded, the transformation programme was going to be funded by earmarked reserves. So now we know the true figure, but there was talk about this improvement plan being funded by the earmarked reserve. So it's a pity that information wasn't forthcoming sooner. We note the reasons why, that's local government for you, but it's disappointing that these matters weren't fully scrutinised, and no doubt they will be fully scrutinised in due course. So there are 4 questions that we have in mind of no order, not in any importance, but one of the questions that we have, and I suppose it's a question for Andrew Lovegrove, the earmark reserves, if this money's set aside for the improvement plan, what will be the position of the earmark reserves after this? So what monies will be left? That's a key important thing that I think all councillors need to know, regardless of this decision. Just need to know how much money is left in those reserves. That's a specific question about the finances. The next question is, given the extra investment to fix the problem, how can we be sure that this money is going to fix the problem rather than just increase the base budget, therefore leaving the council with spiralling costs? That's the second question. There's a large focus, and has been historically a large focus, on improving the outcomes of children in care. How can we be sure that this extra investment will lead to better outcomes for children? And fourthly, given the increase in the expenditure, it's linked to the increase in costs and cost pressures. So can we be given some assurance that moves are afoot to address these cost pressures, so that, that there are better ways of commissioning services that don't cost as much but still provide the outcomes for our children that are needed? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lester. I think I'll ask Mr. Lovegrove to deal with your first question.
Thank you, Leader. In terms of the balance on the earmarked reserve, financial resilience reserve, the balance today is £16.7 million. So there is plenty of sufficiency reserve in that reserve to fund that we're requesting in front of Cabinet today. But Cabinet will also remember that we have a large number of other earmarked reserves. So those are still in place and are there for the purposes they've been set. In terms of an update on those, as we're at the last day of this financial year, we're just in the process of finalising those down the year-end process, and we'll report to Cabinet in the normal way when we do the outturn, an up-to-date position on all the other balances. But I'm comfortable with your 1.5 million. This is affordable and doesn't put the council into jeopardy.
Thank you. So 3 more questions. Councillor Toynbee.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Lester. Good questions. I hope I can remember them all. Yes, obviously, I'm extremely aware of my responsibility in that we need to show results from investments and making sure we get value for money on behalf of Herefordshire residents. And as you say, they have a right to know what we're doing. And I agree that clear, simple, basic communication is really, really important, and we'll make sure that we do that. I agree with you that nobody wants a budget that's just going to go on and on growing year after year, and I can assure you that that's not going to happen. As we've heard, there was quite a bit of catching up that we did need to do. In terms of commissioning, yeah, I agree. I think that there's a lot around commissioning that can be extremely frustrating, and I can assure you that we will build in, well, improving our commissioning is part of the plan, given the state of the market, especially with homes for young people. It's very difficult and frustrating, but I agree that it's really important. And along with absolutely everything else that has been mentioned today, it will all be accountability on it, project management, reassurance, reporting is all really built in, completely built into every aspect of this as we go on. Thanks very much.
I think, Councillor Lester, it is a huge figure we're talking about, and for me that's why the benchmarking process that's going to go on that the Chief Executive has mentioned is so important. What are other councils spending in this area, and how do we compare? Certainly since I've been a councillor, I think a big issue in this department has been the number of cases which are dealt with by each social worker. So just sort of basic maths. We need to reduce that significantly. It's been mentioned over and over by Ofsted, and that is bound to cost money. It's just a matter of how much it costs. And COVID has presented us with additional problems. I think what I pick up is that if children at home have got more issues, perhaps more complex issues than they had before, and we're going to have to pick up that additional cost. So we are very, very mindful that this is money from the public. We are stewards of that. We're also responsible for these children, and it's a balancing act, and we will do our very best to deliver what is appropriate for the children and be properly accountable for the money that's spent. Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Leader. First of all, Councillor Harvey, I'd like to ask you a question, if you'd be so kind. Excuse me. I was pleased to hear you say value for money, and it must have been extremely frustrating for you to be lumbered with such a huge sum of money demanded from your department and Mr. Lovegrove so soon after you'd worked tirelessly on a budget. Can you tell us when you were made aware of these expenditures that were about to be imposed on us, and not in an adverse way. I'm not saying it in that respect. And were you satisfied with the explanation you were given?
Councillor Mathewson, you've probably got a number of questions. I'd like to follow the pattern of Councillor Lester, who asked them all up front. Unless you've only got one for us.
Oh, no, I got about 10.
Yes. Would you like to...
No, right, if that's what you want then. Right, the other thing is mainly to Darryl. Darryl, you know very well that some of us have worked tirelessly to try and put some ideas and suggestions to address these issues and problems. One of the issues I put to you, and you very gratefully gave credit for and took it up, was putting teams in place to intervene early to try and keep families together and reduce the number of children coming into care. Unless we start to reduce the pressure on us, we're not going to reduce the financial pressure on us. So that's one. The other thing I also suggested to you, that you try to co-opt retired staff to come in to work a couple of half days a week with new members to help them through difficult times. And so that's another question. Now, both of those are progressing. And the other thing which has come to my attention, this old issue is putting tremendous pressure on school staff, particularly ed teachers, who are having to write comprehensive report for court cases and goodness knows what. Could you also comment on that? If you want me to go on agency, leader, or do you want me to stop there and put the other two after?
Go on, keep going, Councillor Matthews.
Right, okay. The other thing, Darryl, is you're probably a difficult one to deal with, agency staff. Is there anything I respectfully suggest that you could do through the LGA or government to address the extortionate cost of agency staff? And it's so demoralizing to the regular staff to have people coming in and paid half as much again. Is there anything that you think could be done, could help to alleviate this, not in children's services, but in the nursing services and everything, to help to alleviate that problem? The other thing is lost that one now, leader. Where are we? You're putting in several other layers of managers, not for supervision. One of the main critics of Ofsted over the years is a lack of supervision, and I may add discipline. Those are main things that you've got to address. Unless you address those, you're not going to make progress that we expect with all this money being invested. I know it's a difficult job, and we've got to look after our children, but at the same time, we must do it with value for money and every effort. So I'll leave it at that. So with these extra service managers, can you recommend that supervision and discipline will be there and that we'll get the service improved? And how long do you anticipate before there'll be some noticeable improvement?
Thank you, Councillor Matthews. So Councillor Harvey, first of all.
I was told the amount of money that was required on the 3rd of March. So just slightly under a fortnight before we were providing briefings to all members and to group leaders on the issue. So, you know, earlier this month. I would like, while I'm given the opportunity to say something, is just to thank Councillor Lester for the questions that he was asking about cost pressures and increased expenditure. You know, it is a concern where the money's going to come from in the future for this. But just to put where we are in context, when we came into administration in 2019, the budget for Children's Directorate was less in real terms than it was back in 2013. So there had actually been a significant paring back of the funding in this area over that period of time. And the increases in the budget since then have been really to address the issues that, you know, that were a consequence of how the money was chosen to be spent in earlier years.
Thank you. So, Mr. Freeman, I don't know whether we'll Councillor Toynbee, do you want to answer any of the over to Darryl?
I'll have a go. Thank you, Councillor Matthews, for your questions. So you're quite right. You and I have had conversations in the past about early help services, and part of this proposal not only is improving the quality of the practice in social care services, but it's starting to influence and shift some of the workflow and capacity into early help. You'll know, because we've had the conversation in the past, that early help services aren't just the responsibility of Herefordshire Council. It's very much a provision that's provided across a broad partnership, including schools, health services, community groups and communities themselves, and a clear focus of the activity in the months and the year ahead is to develop the Children and Young People's Partnership, and that partnership approach to earlier help and intervention. We need to make sure that families are getting the right help at the right time, and trying to avoid them reaching the point of crisis where a statutory intervention or social work intervention is required. We've had the conversation about retired staff, and that's a conversation I have been having with our HR colleagues, but also looking at the broader approach to how do we grow our own. There is a national shortage of social workers, especially experienced social workers across the country. Recruitment in Herefordshire and many other local authorities is a challenge, and we're looking very carefully at how we retain our existing workforce and how we grow and develop them, how we extend and develop the availability of apprenticeships in the future, and how we look to support newly qualified social workers and develop a brand, if you like, that is Herefordshire as an employer of choice going forward. But also we have some incredible colleagues in our workforce who are not social work qualified, but bring a whole range of other qualifications and experience. And we're looking very carefully and closely at the broad range of activities that are undertaken across the service, so that we consider whether some of the activity might be done by other colleagues with other qualifications and experience, so that we don't keep continuing to try to recruit to posts that we struggle to recruit when other skills and experience might serve as well. And of course, as a council, we welcome a flexible approach to working. So we're looking at how best we encourage people to come and join us, whether they're retired or at another point in their work life. You asked the question about pressures on schools. I certainly acknowledge that for children who are subject to a child protection plan or children who are looked after and possibly in court proceedings, there is a pressure on schools, as there are on health services and a number of other agencies whom the courts might ask for specialist reports. I think on the point of pressure on schools, schools this term have had a pretty horrendous time, not because of the pressure on children's social care services particularly, but because of the pressure of COVID, which continues in our schools with high rates of infection. And I met a group of head teachers last Friday and thanked them on behalf of the council for the work they've done this term for keeping schools open and keeping children in schools. It's been a real challenge. So we are doing our best to reduce any unintended pressures on schools, recognising they've got quite a lot on their plate at the moment. And of course, we saw a government white paper this week too, which we will support schools to work through and to respond to. You asked another question around agency staff. First of all, I would say, just want to say for the record, we've got some really, really good agency staff in Herefordshire, and you know, the fact that people are locum doesn't mean it's a different quality. We've got some really good locums and interim staff, and I absolutely want to hang on to those. But you're right, we all want to make sure, though, that our workforce is increasingly permanent in its nature as we move forward. That's better for children and families in terms of stability, but it's also less expensive. There is a premium to be paid when recruiting through agencies. Paul Walker and myself have recently been lobbying the Department for Education, the Association of Directors of Children's Services and the Local Government Association to ensure that they're aware of some of the pressures that we particularly are experiencing at the moment around recruitment and the use of agencies, but also making sure that's reflected in terms of a national picture. And we've had some, I think, useful and encouraging conversations in recent weeks, particularly with the Department for Education. And I've already talked about how we will continue to try to grow our own in the years ahead. You mentioned that we'd introduced several layers of managers. Just to be clear, we've only reintroduced one, and that's the group of service managers that you point to. That was a layer that was previously in the service and had been taken out in the past. They've been reintroduced, and you're absolutely right. I agree with you 100% in reiterating the significance of the impact of good quality and frequent supervision as the bedrock for really good practice with children and families. And already we're seeing, since the introduction of those service managers, far more frequent supervision, both for individuals as personal supervision and development, but also supervision of cases. And that's absolutely where we want to continue to improve in the year ahead, because that and manageable caseloads are absolutely key to improvement. And I think I've answered each of your questions there.
Thank you, Darrell. Just a quick word, Leader. I wanted to make it abundantly clear. I'm not critical on what's happening. We've got to take care of our children. But at the same time, we've got to make sure we ask the right questions, as Councillor Harvey said, to make sure we're getting value for money and the improvements are shown as a result of this investment. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Matthews. Absolutely right. I'll move on now to Councillor Fagan.
Yes, thank you, Chair. On behalf of the Green Group, we'd like to say that we support this investment, and we know that we need to make these sorts of investments to help us deliver the improvements that are required. I will also say I agree with Councillor Davis that this is what happens when you destroy social fabric through underfunding. Now we are in this situation. We actually need to hear what the people who have been tasked with getting us through to a better service are requesting, and if this investment is required and it is well monitored, then that is what we need to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fagan. And finally, Councillor Ginman.
Thank you very much on behalf of Independents for Herefordshire, but I have to say that I think we should be looking at this as all councillors. This is not a party political issue. It's not a group issue. It's how we do the best we possibly can for the children in this county in an extraordinarily difficult national situation. As the Local Government Association pointed out last year, the vacancies in social services for social workers was up, or the numbers leaving was up 16% in 1 year on the preceding year. Overarchingly, the number of people required to meet the task and meet this job is rising. One of the questions I would certainly be grateful for a little bit of comment on, I noticed that the comments that have always come in the past from Ofsted have been on case numbers. And I notice on page, I think it's 288, you've got the average caseload. Can I just clarify with Darrell perhaps, is this a mean or a median figure that you're using here? Because clearly those figures are still very high. And I think it's really important that we as a council understand that this is not going to be a problem that's going to be solved quickly. I think you've said somewhere along the way, a 3-year program. Well, the children of today are the children of today, and we've got to try to manage this situation now. And I say, I look at those mean or median figures, and it is concerning that those are well above what I believe are the expected figures of 15 to 18 cases that would be the normal for a social worker. So we are still got a problem here and likely to have a problem for some time. So I do wonder if the COVID effect also has actually added to that, whether there must be now with 2 years on, there must be quite a bit of evidence as to whether or not that is adding, and if so, how significantly it's adding to the workload. I was also a little bit concerned with a comment that was just made by one of the other council's leaders, that the situation, that the cultural situation was not getting any better. That is a sort of statement which I think we have to be extraordinarily careful, because if we indeed feel that or have a belief in that, we have to work together to ensure that we move it on. It's not for statements, it's actually for action. And it's an action for each and every one of us as councillors to work with all those involved. Those social workers that we've got at the moment are working darn hard. That's evident from the caseload. We have to provide the support where it's needed and how it's needed, because we need them, the children need them, the adults need them. We're talking children here, but we've got adult social care as well. So I'm wholly supported behind the figures and the funding. I totally note, and I'm sure that all would want to see this money spent in an efficient manner. It will be audited. It will need to be audited. Every penny that we raise from our residents needs to be accounted for, quite rightly. And I note Councillor Lester's comments in that regard. But at the end of it, we've got to make sure we do the right and proper job. And I do have a little bit of a concern of the timelines, the availability of the people to do it. But I certainly want a message to go from us today that we're supporting those out there doing the best they can.
Mr. Raymond, are you able to answer that one?
Yeah, and thank you, Councillor Jimman. So the data in that chart is the mean data, and we're currently working how we can differently present that, because you're quite right. And for some workers, there's a range, and we're trying to look at how we present that as a median. And I can say with confidence that actually, in fact, in the majority of cases, in terms of the rows on that table, the situation has improved now at the end of March since it was at the end of February. We're seeing the average caseloads reducing over time. You talked there about the kind of that optimum, which is often cited of 15 to 18. You're quite right. Those local authorities that are good and outstanding, they typically see an average caseload, and a caseload, by the way, we're talking about children here, so one case is one child. So I typically see a workload of 15 to 18 children that they work with, so you can build a good relationship and do direct work and the like. So in a number of our teams, we're not there yet. You're quite right, we need to do more. I'm not suggesting we need more capacity at this point. I think there's a clear proposal in here for the capacity that we do need. We will manage that workload and that workflow through better practice and through better management oversight and supervision. Some of those, through better practice, we'll see shorter interventions and better outcomes. In that case, that's another way of driving down workloads for social workers. But yeah, that's absolutely a proxy of how well we will be doing going forward. And of course, we need to listen to families so that they are telling us that they have fewer changes in social worker and have built a relationship with their social worker that's trusting and honest. And similarly, our social workers, our personal advisors, our family support workers will hopefully be telling us that they've got a manageable caseload and that they're able to do the jobs that they're motivated to get up each morning to come into work and do.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. I think I'll put the recommendation, if I may, to the Cabinet. So the recommendation to Cabinet members is as follows. Recommendation A is the drawdown of up to 11.49 million from the Financial Resilience Reserve in 2 tranches as laid out above is approved to support resourcing the transformation stage of children's services. And B, Cabinet note the increased base budget requirement for 2023-24 onwards. So all those in favour? Thank you very much. I'd just like to take this opportunity to say a few more words about this report. The decision to allocate 11.49 million to support improvements in the provision of services in the Children's Directives is a very significant decision by this Cabinet and this administration. I trust it will be seen as a serious message of intent by this Council. We must improve the outcomes for children in our care. We are advised by the senior officers of the Council that the actions set out in this report are what is required. It is clear from the advice received that this area of the Council is under-resourced and has been for some time. You don't have to look far in the report to see that the assessment is that we need an additional 82 people in order to meet ongoing demand. In the current market, recruiting to achieve this higher level is not going to be easy, but it is essential if we are to achieve our goal. But this is not just about numbers. As councillors, be it in the former administration or the current one, we know that numbers can be deceptive. It is about a change of culture. Within this directorate, we must have a positive and supportive culture, one where social workers not only feel valued, but are valued. We also need a culture across all childcare, including in schools, in the health system, policing, and the community and voluntary sector, where responsibility is shared. Yes, the council will take the lead and responsibility, but if we are to be a child-centred and child-caring county, we need to work better across all these sectors. There is no quick fix, and there is potential for bumps along the way. Being a social worker is not an easy task. I had a comment the other day from a social worker saying that some resist their involvement, in that they impinge on people's personal lives, an action which is resisted. They need our support as cabinet members, from councillors and from the public in order to do their work. I look forward to a time in a few years when we can say that children in our care are well looked after and are being given a good start in life, and the social workers consider that Herefordshire is a destination of choice for them. And why should that not be when we live in such a beautiful part of the world? I want to thank the whole of Cabinet for this support, for their support for this report, and the support of all council officers who have had a significant part to play. We depend on officers delivering, and I know that they are committed to do this. Thank you. We'll move on now to the next item, item 7. In many ways, items 7 and 8, the delivery plan and communications plan are closely linked. And the first proposal is with the delivery plan to agree the proposal for the delivery plan. And I'd ask Councillor Harvey to introduce this topic. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I'm pleased to introduce the papers setting out our delivery plan for 2022-23, which describes how the strategic ambitions within the Council's 4-year county plan have been delivered and monitored since 2020, and highlights some of the higher profile deliverables planned for the coming year. This is a good moment to pause briefly to reflect and celebrate the many achievements of the last 2 years, despite all that COVID and the weather has thrown at us. The last 2 years have shown graphically how vital local government is in responding swiftly and appropriately to urgent local need, and how good local councils are at doing this when the chips are down. The achievements highlighted from the last 2 years in this report are grouped according to the 3 interdependent themes of the county plan, these being our economy, our community, and our environment. And these are listed against the broad objectives to which they contribute. In addition to this remarkable list, our officers have continued to deliver all the business as usual services of the council, as well as the business as exceptional requirements placed upon us all through the pandemic, many of which continue into the coming year as we need to adjust to doing some things differently forevermore. This is also a good time to say thank you to our staff for their dedication and hard work over the last 2 years, and to all the officers involved in developing the plan for the coming year. For my own areas of responsibility, I'm so pleased that we're making such good progress in updating the county's planning policy framework, and the progress already made in delivering the transformation and modernisation programme of the council's own operation, which has included the introduction of robust project management across all areas of the council. In the coming year, this transformation programme will focus on how the rapid evolution of digital technology and smart devices and the agile management and use of our own data and that shared by our partners can support service change and deliver further savings or income generation. I'm sure that my cabinet colleagues have got deliverables achieved and anticipated that they would each like also to highlight. And so I'll hand over to my colleagues for comments and any questions.
Thank you very much. So passing over to Cabinet colleagues and Councillor Chance, do you want to start? Thank you.
Very happy to do so, thank you. Yes, but I won't run through all of the things that are in this report because there is an awful lot. But you know, anybody who has a glance at the report, and I really do recommend to anybody watching online that you have a wee look at it. There's loads of good stuff to report. So, for example, on transport, we set up new car share clubs, the free weekend bus travel, and so forth. And for next year, we've got these long-term plans to invest in active travel. I'm particularly pleased that we've taken decisions to crack on with building environmentally friendly and affordable housing. We've set up a county-wide climate and nature partnership, run the Citizens Assembly and allocated new funding to that, and next year we will be delivering that funded programme responding to the recommendations of the Climate Assembly. We've already just started a Greener Footprints campaign. If you search Greener Footprints Herefordshire online, you'll find it. Really want to encourage everybody in the county to connect with that campaign and help take action to help us achieve our collective ambitions for zero carbon and nature rich. We'll be adopting our new nature strategy for the county shortly, and we're really determined to move forward on retrofit, so fixing up the buildings that we've already got, people's housing in particular, to help people to have lower fuel bills and keep warmer in their homes. You know, the recent rises in fuel costs have really highlighted just how crucial that is, and so that's something that I'm really committed to driving forward in the coming year. We've made really good progress towards improving the standards of new builds as well. We're currently out to consultation on our environmental building standards supplementary planning document, and we'll shortly be going out to consultation on the new supplementary planning document on intensive livestock and water quality, because as we all know, you know, tackling the quality of water in our rivers is absolutely essential, and it was highlighted in a public question just earlier in this meeting. So there's so much more to report and to celebrate that we've achieved. We've reduced our council's own carbon footprint by nearly 60% now, so that's fantastic. But lots more to do next year, and I'm really grateful to everybody involved on the staff team throughout all of the directorates, because certainly in my area, on the environmental side, it takes everybody's engagement with that, and indeed on the economic development side, I haven't even talked about the fantastic work that we've been doing to support the tourism sector, for example, and the plans that we've got going forward with that. So, yeah, I'll pass over to everybody else because we'll be here all day if we all enthuse about our own areas. But I think the delivery plan really shows how much we've been achieving and sets out really clearly what it is that we're going to do in the next year. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Chance. Sort of spoken from the heart. Thank you. Councillor Crockett. Or if not Councillor Crockett, maybe Councillor Davies wants to start. And I'll come back to you, Councillor Crockett. You'll look at you might be frozen.
No, she's playing the best game of musical statues that you've ever seen, Leader. Councillor Chang was really good, and she said, I'm not going to go through the things in the report. I'm going to say that I don't believe that everybody will read the report, so I am going to use all of the things in the report. So I'm sorry, not sorry. So going to talk about the areas in my particular portfolio area. So this year we produced a new integrated waste strategy to meet our ambitious waste reduction and recycling targets. Worth noting, just from tomorrow, we will be diverting less than 1% to landfill, which is a massive achievement for our council. Next year, we will be implementing a new waste strategy in preparation for our collection changes in 2024, in which we will do lots and lots of consultation for you. We will also, oh, excuse me, I've managed to lose my, here we go. I'll get there in the end. I'm trying to do 10 million things at once. This is what happens when you've got a full-time job and you're also a councillor. Things get lost. Here we go. Sorry. We're also promoting changes to the new collection system for refuse and recycling throughout the year. And we're running pilot schemes for reusable nappies with a number of families, and trials recycling storage options with people living in flats. Exciting news coming up with our reusable nappies, which I get the most requests from members of the public about. We're about to launch our scheme, so look out for that in the media. With regards to our work that we've been doing on schools, we've done a lot of press around the on time and in budget completion of the Marlbrook School extension. We've opened up this new special needs sixth form school, a sixth form college in Hereford at the Beacon College, of which we should all be incredibly proud. We're currently we've completed 16 feasibility studies for key investment priorities for our schools. And we've built a new science block at John Creel High School, adding those much needed places in Ross-on-Wye. We've also, for the following year, we will be tendering construction, and Councillor Hewitt will be cheering, I'm sure, from her seat, a tendering construction of the new school building at Peter Church Primary School. We will be refurbishing and expanding the Brookfield School. And we will seek approval for the rebuild of Westfield School and move to the design stage, much needed in that particular area. With regards to how we're operating with our assets, just last year we placed the operation of Maylord Orchards Centre Management with Hoople, and I think for those of you that have been on social media, you will see what an incredible change that has been for the centre, with events happening all throughout the year, and they are attracting. I think we had superheroes the last time. I believe we've got a bunny at Easter, but I'm not sure which one of us has to dress up as that. We've also moved to flexible working in response to COVID-19 and vacated key buildings, which creates that much needed revenue saving for us so that we can invest in things that we're talking about just a moment ago. The other things for next year for us is that we will produce asset management plans for each council-owned property based on up-to-date knowledge of conditions. This will be music, I am sure, to Councillor Matthews' ears, if nobody else's, about what we're going to do with our buildings and ensure we get the value from them that we need. And finally, we plan the capital works for the Shire Hall to bring it back into council and community use, which is absolutely fantastic news. And even more exciting are the two Stronger Towns projects that fall within my portfolio area, the brand new museum and art gallery, of which we'll start our consultation soon, and the relocation of our library to Maylord Orchards to create a completely different approach to a library and what it does, and it will be exciting for our young people to come to. So I just wanted to send my final thanks to all of the staff in my particular area for their continued efforts to not only do the job that they are paid to do, as we always hear, they're all paid to do it on social media, but also to do it with such enthusiasm and with such passion for achieving the most for the county. I've said I've never met an officer at this council that has not wanted to do the absolute best for Herefordshire, and I stand by that. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. I'll go to Councillor Toynbee next.
Thank you. Yeah, just very briefly, as we all know, councils generate an absolutely vast amount of data, reports, papers, strategies, documents, and everything else. It can be quite easy to get lost in it all. So this is a really beautiful, I'm sure that everybody will want to read this because it's so beautifully laid out. It's really clear. We've got a column of, so far this is what we've done. We've got a column this year, we will, you know, the people who ask us, what have you done and what are you going to do? Here's the answer. It's really, really nice. And I know residents will be interested to know what we're doing about, for example, talk community, improving our schools, as Councillor Davies said, making sure our schools are up to date or as accessible as possible, bringing services in-house. I know that's popular with people, protecting our countryside, recycling, tourism, so many things that we know our residents are interested in. So please, everybody, read it. Thank you.
Thanks, Diana. Councillor Crockett, please.
Thank you, Leader. I'm sorry I've had 3 outages so far this afternoon, so please, I'm going to quickly get my piece in. Well, what a year. Now we have to plan to top it. I, like Councillor Harvey, want to thank all officers involved for comprehensive and detailed forward planning of our strategic ambitions. We in adults and communities and public health have delivered and will continue to deliver our objectives, such as CO5, which is quality of care and development of technology enabled living, CO4 and EN3, to become a sustainable food county. CO6, further development of talk community, which Councillor Toynbee has already touched on. That programme is exponential. But most of all, the development of the council-owned care facility. This is ongoing. It's not going to be a quick project, but we are going there. We have high expectations for the coming year and look forward to the fruition of these identified projects and programmes. And before I get cut off again, I'm going to thank you all again for your input.
Thank you, Councillor Crockett. Councillor Harrington, your hand isn't up, but I'm sure you might want to say something.
I can always be relied on, Leader. I'm actually not going to say a lot in the interest of time, but I'm going to say not so much about what we're doing, but how we're doing it. And I think that's what I consider the most significant. So we dealt with austerity over the since 2010, and certainly since 2013 in Herefordshire Council, by absolving ourselves of or outsourcing our responsibilities, not just for the public realm contract, which is many councils do, and it's appropriate in circumstances to do that, but in terms of our sort of officer capacity and our officer thinking and our ability as a council to function and to perform our statutory duties in planning, in transport planning, in making critical decisions, strategic decisions. And I'm so grateful that we have been able to provide some capacity within our teams, specific leads on transport strategy. We haven't thought about transport strategy for probably 15, 16 years. We've just thought about one approach, which has not responded to the challenges that we face as a country and as a world, which has not responded to best practice. So that's probably what I'm most grateful for. We've got a lot coming up. We will see how we get on with it. We brought public rights of way and traffic regulation order team and the traffic management team back in-house this year. I think those should always have been statutory functions that we kept as a council, and I'm glad they're back in-house. So yeah, let's look forward to the year ahead of us. Just while I'm on the subject, I just want to thank all of our officers, as other members have done. They have done a fantastic job, and I also want to thank in particular Mr. Crossland, who's been an interim with us, who will be leaving in a couple of weeks. Unfortunately, we can't hang on to him for any longer, and he has been exceptional in his ability to push forward projects for us and to manage things correctly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harrington. I think I'll go to the group leaders now, if I may. Councillor James.
Thank you. In the interest of the time going on, I will say very little other than the waste. It's good news about only 1% going to land disposal. But I would remind members that the current proposal was opposed by many members of this council, and we are where we are because of decisions that were made previously. The other thing is the Shire Hall. I'm very concerned about the fact that it is taking so long. There is a danger we could use the Crown Court in Hereford if we're not careful, and that would be a great loss to the status and the economy of the city.
Could I respond to that, Leader?
Yes, certainly.
I just think it's worthwhile just responding. Thank you, Councillor James, for that. And the Shire Hall project is unfortunately taking a long time just because of the type of building that it is, and we're getting a detailed design. What we have done is work continuously, and I would like to really thank Andrew Husbands for his time and patience with working with Her Majesty's Court Service to ensure that relationships are not broken down through these delays and that we're finding suitable solutions for them. The good news is the Court Service love the Shire Hall, as we all do. The courtrooms are spectacular, and that we are very lucky that they are continuing to commit to us, but we will make sure that we keep them in communications, because I think that is the key to making sure that they stay with us.
The key to staying with us is that we've got court number 1, which is probably one of the most popular courtrooms in the country for judges.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Councillor Lester.
Yes, thank you. The Conservative Group always keen to use every opportunity to thank staff for delivering services. Some of our staff have to deliver services that members of the public aren't keen on, but they do it just nonetheless, and that's to be commended. But whichever service they're delivering, the general effort of staff is much appreciated, and not only through COVID, but many members of our staff have just carried on regardless, day in, day out, year in, year out. So we note that and we thank them for their service. My daughter came back with a bag, time to shine, and she was grinning from ear to ear about the fact that she'd been brushing her teeth at nursery. She was delighted and loved all the gifts and the toothbrush that came with it. It's of huge importance to have instigated that initiative, and we know that it's historically been a huge problem. So I welcome that we welcome that. I welcome it as a parent, we welcome it as a group, and it's things like that that really can make a difference, and so we commend that. With the delivery plan, just a little gripe, it does say that 2021, 2022, 93% broadband coverage. Does make it sound like it happened in 1 year. So you perhaps want to just phrase that differently. It's great that you've got to 93, but you know, it's important to show that that was not a one-off, because that would have been a miracle by any stretch of the imagination. But you know, good, it's 93%. It's work in progress. We understand that. But you know, if we can appreciate the tweak, that I think that would set it in a context, and demonstrate how challenging that role target has been, given it's a rural county. We note the student accommodation, the Shell store, Talk Communities, and the Barrel Bikes, all of the spade work we did as a group, and so it's great to see that that's coming to fruition, because it's things like that that you've carried on that will have long-term benefits from the county, for the county, sorry. And I note that there's quite a few things here that you've all talked about that is, you know, progress. One of the things I would just like to highlight, though, for Councillor Davis, she's still on the line, getting to less than 1% for landfill is a huge achievement. And we acknowledge that it's something that's really important for the environment and really important for all Herefordshire residents. So I would just like to particularly highlight that as a real win-win, and let it continue. So note the report, and my daughter is smiling with her new toothbrush. So thank you.
Yes, that bit of advertising, much appreciated, Councillor Lester. Thank you. Moving on then to Councillor Matthews.
Yeah, Councillor Davis, you appear to be the flavour of the month. I would also like to thank you, and you know you've always had my support when it comes to maintaining and our historic buildings. I think it's so important when a city like Hereford starts to lose its historic buildings. It's a very sad day. So thank you for that, and I'm ever so grateful. The other thing is where it says on page 224. The council setting in motion activity that will have long-term benefits of future economy. Again, that should be our number one priority, a prosperous local economy. Without that, we've got nothing. So that's the aim and ambition of us all. The other thing is, I think it's back to you, Councillor Davis, just a little naughty question here. Accommodation at the student accommodation approach to Hereford Station, the block of flats. Are all those flats now occupied?
I will have to pass over to probably Andrew Lovegrove or Paul Walker. Is Andrew here?
Yes, he is. Yes, Andrew, yeah.
Thank you, Leader. They're not all occupied at the moment, and that's for City Hut to manage. They're the operators of the centre, but my understanding is they're not all let at the moment, but they do have plans to fill them.
So does that mean, Andrew, that we're having to pay the rent? Because the contract said if they weren't occupied, the council was responsible for paying the rent for them. Is that the case?
That risk is with City Heart, so it's for their risk to make sure they're occupied. They haven't asked us to pay any of the rent.
Thank you. And last but not least, I would also like to thank, we got some wonderful staff. They work with cross-party, and we're ever so grateful, and we're ever so lucky we got some grand people. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Matthews. Councillor Fagan.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. The Green Group sort of note the report, and it's actually very well laid out. As Councillor Toynbee said, it's easy to digest. It looks fantastic, I have to say. What we have achieved in the last couple of years, despite all the challenges, has been remarkable. Particularly, we're looking forward to the improvements in minimising our waste and increasing recycling, and the active travel measures that are being brought into place, and the support for cycling and walking. What would be really good to see is improvements in the bus strategy for Herefordshire, which I know is part of the proposals and very much dependent on funding from government. But in terms of sustainable transport, we've got to improve the bus situation, and also transport to school for young people in the county, and just making sure that it is safe for people to walk and cycle. We need to continue working on that, and to look at how we can actually get children to school without compromising on air quality and creating congestion, and providing much better, safer routes to school and sustainable transport options. And just to thank all the staff who have actually made all of what we have achieved so far possible. And one of the other successes is the Talk community, the community development opportunities that have come with that have been absolutely fantastic. What would be great is to see community groups being better supported in being able to access funding as they look at funding opportunities within their particular areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fagan. Finally, Councillor Chinman.
Thank you. On behalf of Independents for Herefordshire, it's really good to see this list put out there of what's happened and what's going to happen. But I'm slightly reminded when I look at this of the comment by the then Prime Minister, Harold Macmillan, when he asked Rab Butler what represented the greatest challenge as a statesman. And he said, events, dear boy, events. In other words, actually having resilience built into our systems so that we can cope with things when they don't go quite to plan is also absolutely fundamental. And I sit in an area where we had promises on our broadband that we've seen time and again fall, and the last time in a major way. And I'm very grateful for the efforts that now are being put in to try to make up that deficit. It's so important to the economy, to the well-being, to the education of this part of the county to find ourselves with that number of houses and premises still not able to cope with broadband. It's one of the pleas that, as you know, I constantly come back to and will do so as we try to get there. But I do appreciate that this was the failure of a major company to supply, and thank you to all those who got on with it to provide that resilience, and we'll see it through. And I think that's one of the important messages here, that even if we do get the event, dear boy, we'll tackle them and take them forward together. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chinman. I don't propose adding any more. I think I'll put this to the vote. So the recommendation, if I can find it. Recommendation to Cabinet members is as follows. Recommendation that the Cabinet approves the delivery plan as set out in Appendix A. All those in favour? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. So we'll move on then to communication strategy, which fits quite neatly with the delivery plan. Councillor Tide is unfortunately not able to come today, so I'd like to introduce this on her behalf. This document's been a long time in preparation. There's been much consultation. The current strategy expired in 2020, so it's very appropriate to have a new one, particularly linked with the county plan. I was struck when I read through some of the rather boring bits at the back about the policies. There's paragraph 7.1.2. I'm told I shouldn't say it's boring. 7.1.2.
That's right, Leader.
It talks about the code of recommended practice on local government, which is provided by the government, and that refers to the local authority publicity having particular functions. And first, it's to increase public awareness of the services provided by the authority and the functions it performs. So that's a really important element, telling people what the authority can do. Secondly, to allow people a real and informed say about issues that affect them, which we seek to do. Next, to explain to electors and ratepayers the reasons for particular policies and priorities. And finally, in general, to improve local accountability. So that's kind of the government guidelines, and I think this document follows along those lines very well. I was particularly struck with a couple of the objectives which are written on page number 4 of the report, 298 of the pack. The first of these objectives talks about the strategy being here to help our residents and stakeholders feel informed about council services and policies and how to engage with them. So that kind of encapsulates the guidance in the government's code. But another item in these objectives is to develop pride across internal and external audiences in the council's unique role in leading Herefordshire into the future with confidence, clarity and an inspired vision for the future. And I think that's something which we all applaud and very definitely want to happen. We are proud of our county, and we want to encourage and enhance that, and also be proud of our council and what it achieves. There's a reference to a narrative which is on page 302, and there are 2 or 3 points I'd like to highlight in that. The reminder that it's about the future, a powerful reminder of the important work we do that usually goes unnoticed. And as we look to the future, these services will continue to be at the heart of what we do. Second, one of the strands within our own objectives is about connectivity, and it's important to connect people across communities, both virtually and physically. And then to help people feel safe, supported and proud of our county. And finally, to work closely with those who live and work here. So it's partly about the economy, so we can deliver our vision at the heart of the county plan, which guides all we do. So with that, I'll pass over, if I may, to Alex, who will have her own way of explaining all about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Good afternoon, councillors. The communications strategy recommended to Cabinet today reflects messaging within the county plan and supports the council's delivery plan. It is based on the principles of good strategic communication. It outlines our overall approach to developing communications focused on the county plan and establishes a framework for proactive communications work for the coming period. Since the county plan was adopted, the COVID pandemic has changed the world, but the vision for the county remains relevant. To address the impact of the pandemic and other significant organisational changes, we must refocus our vision, review our priorities and work with staff, residents, partners, communities and businesses to lead Herefordshire into the future with confidence. The county plan themes of connectivity, wellbeing and sustainability sit at the core of our policy making, planning and design for the future. These themes form the basis of our planned and proactive corporate communications work, with greater focus on campaign-led activity, stakeholder engagement and internal communications. The communications strategy contains the corporate narrative, which is described by the Local Government Association as fundamental to an organisation's position and mission. The corporate narrative has been developed together with Cabinet members, members of Management Board, the communications team and a communications advisor from the Local Government Association. I'd like to thank all councillors for feedback as part of the communications strategy consultation, and the feedback across thematic areas is attached to the report. We face the future as a proud county with a rich heritage, with strong, creative and connected communities, and an absolute commitment to build a better future for us all, so that everyone feels safe, supported and is proud to live here. Thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, so this paper's been through a number of iterations, a number of discussions. Does anybody have any particular comments, or shall I move direct to the approved leaders? Councillor Toynbee.
Yeah, just very briefly, just to say thank you very much for this. And it's really important that that when our communications isn't just about us telling people what we're doing, you know, that we really more and more have a role as enablers and facilitators, especially with the growth of sort of communities. So we also have this role of enabling local people and community and groups to connect with each other. And I'm really proud of that. I think we're really at the forefront nationally doing that. And so that's a really important part of our communications, which I'm really proud of. And also we have a role in making sure residents are aware of what they're eligible for. I think they really appreciate that, whether it's benefits or anything else. That's really important. And also I'm really glad that we're continuing to do Herefordshire now, because lots of organisations have stopped doing paper things, and I think it's really important symbolically that we get something through the door. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. Do I have any hands? Yes, Councillor Davies.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, it's leading on actually from what the Councillor Toynbee just said about the importance of Herefordshire now. It's always a really difficult battle to sit there and you go, is it worth putting everything online? But we forget that we are a rural community. We have people with different needs, and I'm not going to say the older population, because we have different needs across the whole of our population. And some people really do struggle with the internet and getting knowledge and communications via that way. They like having a piece of paper in their hand. And I'm really grateful that we've taken the decision to continue with it. It's the one that I get the most feedback from residents about. So I'm really glad about that. I'm also really glad that there's been there's a change of approach, and I know Alex has completely taken everything on board and lessons learned from how we communicate, in that we used to be really afraid of talking about the good things that we do for the fear of people telling us the bad. But it's really important that we get that message out and that we sing from every single opportunity about the wonderful things that this council is doing. I think for a long time we've had a bad PR, whether or not it is the perception that we don't listen to residents. It's the perception that people find out information after the event. And I'm really grateful for this new strategy that talks about us being proactive and engaging with the communities that we serve. I think it's absolutely needed. So well done, Alex. I know this has been a really long, hard slog to get to this point where the strategy is able to go through. So congratulations to you and your team.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. Any other contributions, questions? Okay, I think I'll move then to group leaders. Councillor James.
Sorry, I hadn't unmuted myself. I won't comment anymore. It's rather interesting, and I support the use of a publication in order to get the message out. I think I was leader when we first published Herefordshire Now, which was criticised by the opposition at the time. When the opposition became the administration, it adopted it. And when, again, the opposition became the administration, they're continuing it. So it never changes.
Councillor Lester.
Thank you. Not a real point, but a wry smile. We introduced it, and opposition parties were against it as well. So ever was it thus, ever was it thus. We welcome an effective communication strategy, absolutely. Who wouldn't? And that's what we need. Just some points for reflection. Councillor Ginman said events, dear boy. He'll probably accuse me of semantics, dear boy, but when it does say about help our residents and stakeholders feel informed about council services, one wonders whether it would be better to say, because feel informed has this level of uncertainty. It's it's not quite clear whether you are informed or not. You feel informed, but are you? So we're just wondering whether we should say something like, ensure that our residents and stakeholders are well informed about the services that the council provides. And that gives a clear indication of what our aspiration is. And then there's an important point that follows on from that, which is that members of the public and stakeholders can feel that they can engage with the council, which is a very key point. But the way it's reading is that it says that members of the public and stakeholders feel engaged with policies, which there seems to be a little bit of an oddity there. So the suggestion would be something more like provide information and advice that helps residents and stakeholders to engage effectively with our services. So just some food for thought there. And also about the values and the principles. It says that we will only achieve our potential by every individual using the values and the principles. Well, there's a lot of other things that could be done also to improve council services. So the principles and the values are not exhaustive. And what this document is saying is it's only by using this list that we're going to improve. And I think that misses an opportunity here where you could add to the values and principles, like, for example, insisting on better education, being responsible with our resources, working with neighbouring communities. There's an endless list there that we may be in danger of enclosing. So the thought would be something like more open-ended, to say that we will use our values and principles to achieve a high-performing council and improve the lives of our citizens and our environment, but not by stating we're only going to do that by using the principles we've listed. So I just think there's food for thought there that we'd just like to bring to your attention. Thank you.
Perhaps I'll ask Alex to comment on that in a moment. My view is that I think feelings are really important in this particular case. Do people feel informed? Otherwise, just saying, well, we told you, and they reply and say, well, I didn't feel you. You know, I didn't feel you told me. I think actually feelings are something, and they're a little bit more measurable. That we do want to make sure people feel they're informed, rather than just saying, well, we told you. So anyway, Alex, do you want to pass any observations?
Thank you. Just that those were based on the government communications services structure and planning around what we want residents to see and feel. So and what we want them to do off the back of that. So I would agree that feel is important. It's all very difficult to measure, but I do I do accept that. It can be interpreted in different ways. So yeah, if that's something that we need to revisit, we can revisit that as part of the document. But yeah, it's open to interpretation, maybe.
Yeah. Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, obviously a communication strategy is vital and important, and the two independents support this report.
Councillor Fagan.
Yes, thank you. The Greens support the strategy as well. Just one comment that whilst having paper communications is not terribly environmentally friendly, it is actually crucial, because we need to make sure that everybody can actually get access to the information. Comments that have come back to me about recent council tax notices going through people's doors is that it was a missed opportunity to actually explain how council tax is spent, and that potentially this is something that we could look at in the future as to an explanation to residents when we're delivering bad news on their doorstep, that they actually understand what that money is being spent on. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure that's something we'll take up with Herefordshire Now and Alex.
Thank you, Leader. So Councillor Fagan, just to advise that we felt it was more cost effective to include within Herefordshire Now, so we've expanded the explanation within Herefordshire Now to reflect the council tax, so we have more space and opportunity at a more cost effective way.
Thank you.
Councillor Jimman.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, on behalf of Independents for Herefordshire, we welcome this. I mean, I was slightly amused at who invented it first. I think it's somewhat irrelevant. You need a communications policy in this day and age. I mean, whoever thought of it? Yes, it's all something that's become in recent years. And the more you've had means of communication, the more you've needed to refine it. There is a danger sometimes of getting almost too much communication, it coming at you from all over the place. So actually getting something that's set out with a proper and reasonable and reasoned way of doing things is great. I'm very pleased to hear the comments being made by others about the need to ensure that those who are not internet connected, and I've already touched on that subject, so I won't go back to it again, but that they will indeed be included in the communications. And perhaps one plea from me as an independent, blame culture is not really anything that anybody enjoys engaging in, except a few people sometimes on social media for something which I fail to understand. Therefore, actually being constructive and helpful and working together and being cooperative seems to me to be a key. And this communication strategy is all about giving people the information so that they can engage and therefore can make a difference and feel it's their county that they are engaging with, their council, with an opportunity therefore to make a difference, to be part of it or to understand it. So thank you, Alex and team, for really working on that basis of everybody, not just the few that always get engaged.
Thank you, Councillor Jim. And I think we'll go for the recommendation in a moment. If Councillor Tyler and Alex want to work on any minor amendments, they can do so, or just leave it as it is. So if I put this recommendation that A, the communication strategy is approved, and B, the accompanying communications protocols and principles are approved. All those in favour? Thank you very much. So we move on now to the final item, which was postponed because of the possible effect on the election. So this is Market Town investment plans, to approve the investment plans, and I pass over to Councillor Chance for this item. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. And somebody referred to events, dear friends. Events have certainly intervened, unfortunately, and meant that it's taken us longer than hoped to bring this report to Cabinet. So I'm really delighted that we now can. It was originally on the agenda last year, but again, because of COVID, we had a meeting that was postponed then. What we have here is a set of Market Town investment plans that have been developed based on really close consultation with people in those market towns themselves. And this really kind of speaks to the commitment that our administration has made to invest in the market towns, to make sure that the efforts that we put in as a council, the resources that we're able to access, for example, through grant funding, we want to direct them all around the county and address what some people have sometimes said has historically been a bit of a Hereford-centric approach to economic development. We really believe that the market towns and the rural areas are massively significant pillars of our local economy. We've got a kind of three-legged stool of the economy here in Herefordshire: the rural areas, the market towns and the city. And that's what these plans are about, identifying what are the opportunities for investment in economic development related infrastructure projects, buildings and so forth that can help to drive forward the vibrancy of those market towns. So back in September 2020, back in the day, the council engaged the consultancy Rose Regeneration to develop these economic development investment plans for each of the market towns because of that recognition that we've given to their importance. And these reports present the plans and the next steps to Cabinet for approval. So the idea of these investment plans is that they will support the growth of the market towns with this long-term vision for their development and specific projects that have been identified that can support sustainable economic development. Stakeholder meetings and consultations were held in late 2020 and early 2021 with a wide range of stakeholders that's set out in each of these. And potential projects were identified by local people and prioritised against a set of locally agreed criteria. And the MTIPs, the investment plans, bring all of this together with kind of broader contextual information about the regulatory context, the economic context, and a sort of a more outside assessment of each town's opportunities, as led by the consultants that did that work. And there's clearly need in each of the market towns for more investment to support their economies and enable growth. The challenge is, where is the funding going to come from to do that? So the plans identify a number of potential sources of investment. Herefordshire Council funding is one of those. We can, for example, borrow money, but of course that requires that we need to be able to pay it back. And of course, when there's a market failure, that's because the market hasn't seen the opportunity to develop a given piece of land, for example, because market operators don't think that they're going to be able to pay it back. We have a little bit more flexibility as a council, but not so much. So not all of the projects identified by any means can kind of generate a return that will pay for them. So we need to look for opportunities for grant funding and other institutional funding. So what these MTIPs do is they provide this evidence base and the justification to help us to kind of put together business cases or grant applications for these projects going forward. Now, examples of what that might look like. So, for example, we've got the Levelling Up Fund coming forward. We've got shared prosperity funding opportunities. We've got other opportunities to work with local partners who might be able to mobilise their own budgets, as set out in some of these reports. And in fact, we've even been able to use some new funding sources to support some of these projects already. An example is how we've mobilised COVID recovery funding to do some of the things that have been touched on in these reports, like shopfront refurbishments and feasibility studies for the Greenway and so forth. So these MTIPs are going to be live documents that will be kind of really important foundation stones for future development of projects, whatever the funding sources that we can find for them. And projects will be added to the programmes as they're identified locally. So this isn't completely set in stone, nothing else can ever be done. But this is the best place we've ever been in as an authority in terms of setting out visions for each of these market towns and identifying what are the prospects. And as you'll see when you look at those, very clearly assessed according to a wide range of feasibility criteria. Now, all of these market towns are going to get ongoing support from economic development officers, a named economic development officer within the team who's going to work with the market towns to look for those sources of funding. And two of the projects have been identified. So we've already been through a stage of looking at outline business cases and so forth. Two projects have been identified as potentially suitable for Herefordshire Council funding because we put aside £20 million that we want to invest in market towns. That's still there in the budget. And two of the projects have been identified as for exploration, further development with regard to that funding. One of them is a potential mixed development on the council's model farm site in Ross-on-Wye, and the other one is development of land in Ledbury that's currently owned by Heineken. So I'd really like to commend these reports to everybody. I'd like to thank everybody involved in developing the plans, not just the officers and the consultants, but most especially people in the market towns themselves, the stakeholders have engaged in the consultation meeting, put forward ideas, helped to kind of prioritise and identify what could be done and think about the vision for each of these market towns. And, you know, I really looked forward to as many as possible of these ideas being taken forward. Approving these reports today is, you know, a step along that journey. Okay, thanks very much.
Right, anybody have any thoughts? Councillor Davies.
Looks like I've forgotten how to unmute myself, so apologies for that. So gives me the greatest pleasure to introduce the highlights of Ross-on-Wye's market investment plan. Ross-on-Wye is not a difficult place to sell to visitors or those wishing to move to the area. With its placement in an area of outstanding beauty, its use of the River Wye and their array of small independent shops and restaurants, the town sells itself. I would also get into trouble if I didn't mention that it also homes my gorgeous nephew, George. It's the reason why it remains a firm favourite as a tourist destination, gaining even more popularity post-COVID. This popularity, however, does come with a downside, and that is the high cost of housing in the area, and along with, and the quite frankly, nigh on impossible opportunities for locally born young people to get on the housing ladder. You'll see within the document that there are a number of proposals put forward on the Market Town Investment Plan, and I have spoken to the ward members around what would be their priority, and they fit in line with the report. Number one being the Ross Enterprise Park development. For those that don't know, the site is owned by Herefordshire Council and it's been a long-standing employment land allocation. It is recognised that this strategically significant site may also provide an opportunity for housing development in the future. Ward members have identified this as their key priority for the regeneration of Ross-on-Wye, especially with the influx of new younger families moving to the area as a result of their new housing allocations. The second project is Broadmeadow and Tanyard Lane development, where Ross Town Council seek to control the development of this 18-hectare site for housing by encouraging the various landowners to stand firm around their in-principle agreement for equalisation of land values, to prevent piecemeal development, and to deliver a mixed-use development that responds to the needs of the town in terms of employment land provision. The next one is regarding the Riverside Canoe Bunkhouse and Pontoons. I think Ross-on-Wye makes use of the River Wye, unlike anywhere else in Herefordshire. And this particular project involves property acquisition and refurbishment to provide facilities for river users and create linkages to the town centre. The sports centre is next, and a needs assessment identified that there is an undersupply of sports pitches in Ross, and that improving levels of sport participation and engaging in a healthy lifestyle is a key priority for all of Herefordshire. That the centre, for the centre to operate viably and sustainably, it should have a stakeholder club-led structure. That there is need for facility improvements, particularly with regard to improving disabled access, changing accommodation, social facilities that can generate income, and the quality of the sports pitches. The next project is the Ryfield Centre, of which I am personally involved, and that is regarding the asset transfer of Ryfield Centre to a CIC or similar body for community use, possibly with Herefordshire Council leasing some space to provide access services in Ross. There is potential here to free up space in the Larrapers next door to allow conversion of large hall to tiered auditorium, of which there is a lack of the arts in Ross. So this is a particularly exciting one for the cultural strategy. The next project is regarding the Brampton and Selleck Cycleway. This is a joint project proposed with neighbouring parishes, including Brampton Abbots and Selleck parishes, and it involves the restoration of a pedestrian cycle bridge at Backney and utilising the disused Ross to Hereford railway line. Then we talk about the Market House and Apron Plaza, and this is to renovate the 17th century Market House via one of two options, to glass in the ground floor of the Market House and to seek Herefordshire Council's permission to terrace the Market Apron. Don't worry, only 4 more to go. Next one is Museum Without Walls, and this project would provide an augmented reality cultural trail at sites across Ross-on-Wye with the potential to become a significant attraction. That project, by the way, is absolutely groundbreaking, and it's in Ross-on-Wye. And for any of you that have not seen it, I really do implore you to go and have a look. The next one is around High Street pedestrianisation. Next project is regarding the skate park, and this is about improving the Ross Skate Park to a higher national standard and provide additional facilities with to include a 5-a-side football and basketball court, concrete table tennis, a football wall with holes to score goals. And finally, the last project is regarding a shopfront grant scheme, which should do a Ron Seal moment, as Councillor Harvey likes to say, and does exactly what it says on the tin. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Crockett.
Thank you, Leader. I was just laughing because I couldn't understand what a concrete table tennis is. So we'll talk about that one, Gemma, shortly. So yes, Councillor Jones, I'm moving out of Hereford and I'm going to my nearest market town, which is Leominster. As you all know, Leominster holds a strategic location in the north of the county with good rail connectivity. while its wealth of heritage buildings has been recognised by Historic England in awarding the town Heritage Action Zone status with substantial funding. The strategic plan is strongly committed to delivering Leinster and Herefordshire's net zero and nature-rich commitments, and will work in partnership with its communities, businesses, and the Herefordshire Climate and Nature Board to achieve this. I think I beat Councillor Davis because Leinster has a tourist destination with a history dating back to the 7th century. The historic buildings and narrow streets in the town centre retain many medieval and Tudor features. The development of the Leinster leg of the Worcester Bromyard Leinster Greenway would also directly address the aspiration to position the town as a gateway for walking and cycling holidays and other rural activities. The plan includes 2 exciting and transformative regeneration projects. These are on brownfield sites in the town. The phased development of the 15-acre Dale site at Marsh Court would open a key gateway to the town as a multi-purpose facility, including a much-needed GP medical hub, light industrial units, senior living accommodation, a hotel, and artisan food and drink retail. All of it is breathing life into the town itself and driving its economy. There is an opportunity to relocate the fire station from Broad Street car park and co-locate it with the West Mercia police station on the Enterprise Park. This would allow the existing site to be redeveloped as a mixed retail and housing scheme. To support the town's viability as a thriving balanced economy, the town needs to develop integrated and forward-looking skills development capacity to support its residents and to attract inward investment. The Skills Foundry project, developed as a collaboration between NMITE, HCA and Rural Media as part of Hereford Stronger Towns funding bid, aims to include Herefordshire's market towns in a hub and spoke delivery model and will actively engage with Leinster. The MTIP shows how each of these projects contribute to the delivery of Leinster's vision. It will provide a platform for successful funding bids as suitable funding opportunities become available. We at Herefordshire Council will continue to work with Leinster Town Council and other local stakeholders to identify new projects and funding opportunities, whilst carrying out feasibility and foundation work. And we will also support local organisations to apply for funding. I therefore really support these plans and hope we can achieve much in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crossett. Councillor Toynbee next.
Yes, thanks. Yeah, I'm sure that no country in the UK has lovelier towns than Herefordshire. I'm certain about that. They do pop up frequently in the media, but normally is it journalists saying they found some adorable, sleepy little backwater that they've discovered and secret, all the rest of it. Yes, they are beautiful and restful, but there's also a lot going on, and these plans will help add to the dynamism. So it's really important. I also think it's very interesting and important how these plans have been drawn up. The process of local people getting together, meeting up to talk about their priorities and make plans for their town. It's a really great model, and the process itself is as important as the product. And when we look at the historic underinvestment in our market towns, and for me as Councillor Chance says, it shows that, you know, believing in the one true God of the market is not enough. The county isn't a business. So I'll just finish with one specific example, which is the Eco Hub project in Bromyard, which is the one that's come out as top priority in Bromyard. It's a really good example of how work, health, quality of life, training, jobs, land use, etc. are all connected, how everything is connected. And that's also reflected in the delivery plan that we've just been looking at. And quite often we hear people sort of opposing economic growth and protecting the environment as if they're opposites, when it's completely not the case. And as we all know, green tech and green engineering is the future. And there's no better place to do that than Herefordshire. So I think this project in Bromyard is really exciting. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
I think
Councillor Harvey.
Thanks, Leader. Well, it's my turn to say something about my special market town, and I'm sure I can speak for all the ward members in Ledbury in saying that I welcome this initiative to engage with Ledbury stakeholders and to invest in the town by bringing forward various forms of economic growth. Ledbury won't be alone as a Herefordshire market town in feeling left behind when it comes to inward investment by the County Council in previous years. And I'm proud to be part of the administration which has started to put right this oversight. As a consequence of past failures in planning, Ledbury is one of the parts of the county which has experienced disproportionate and mostly unplanned housing growth in recent years, with no commensurate growth in local employment. And the consequence of this has been that even by the 2011 census data, Ledbury had more than 40% of its working population needing to commute to work elsewhere. This isn't a sustainable situation, especially when fuel prices are through the roof and likely to stay that way. I'm not going to list the many outstanding attributes of Ledbury. Suffice to say, it has been listed as one of Europe's top 10 shopping destinations, admittedly by the Guardian newspaper. What I would say is that I welcome the suggestions for economic development projects that have come about as a consequence of this strong piece of engagement work. And I'd like to make a plea for these plans to be kept as living documents that are updated to reflect emerging opportunities across our market towns as part of the ongoing activity of our economic development team. And I'm sure Councillor Chowns is on the case with that. I really hope that some of the suggested development schemes for Ledbury can be brought forward quickly. Wouldn't it be great if we could plan to use some of the government's much talked about levelling up money to level Ledbury up by even a quarter of the funding that's been pumped into Hereford in recent years, and to do likewise for all of our market towns? I think this is a fantastic piece of work. I'm really glad that we've done it. I'm frustrated that we weren't able to talk about it sooner, but I'm really pleased that we've got it before us today. And I hope that we're going to be able to take projects forward quickly and start to demonstrate some real economic inward investment in our market towns.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. It will not have escaped Councillor James' attention that nothing is being mentioned about Kington yet. So I will say a few words, if I may, about Kington. It is one of my favourite places. Before I became a councillor, I remember going up to Hergis Ridge and walking on that beautiful track at the top there, and walking along and then finding there's an old horse racing track. The one claim which nobody else has made for any of their towns is it's kind of a musical connection. And showing my age, Mike Oldfield of Tubular Bells fame was inspired to write one of his albums by going out to Hergis Ridge. So that is a real claim to fame. Hergis Croft Gardens are the most fantastic gardens. If you any time to go around them, they're just so just briefly laid out and just a fantastic model to go up to. Been there a few times the last couple of years. We had the Economic Summit in Kington. It was the best attended summit, so a lot of credit to the local people there for being involved, and I hope they'll continue to be involved in this plan, which is an evolving document and not a dead one. We had a joint meeting with Paris Council. They weren't trying to take over Kington, but we had a good afternoon, and we also had the civic service there last year, so lots of reasons to go up to Kington. The unfortunate lowlight, if you like, with Kington is that it's lost nearly a quarter of its jobs in the period between 2015 and 2018, and that's a significant significant change. And for the future, some small-scale industrial units would be helpful, I think, to encourage small businesses. There's a food and drink offer, or there should be one in Kington, and maybe there's an opportunity for some manufacturing to take place in those units. We talked about a high street regeneration. That has as many supporters as detractors, so that is a hot potato to be dealt with. And there's talk of a new cross-border area of outstanding natural beauty, really pushing Kington as a walking town, and what a great thing that would be for tourism, linking with all the other market towns around the county. So with that, I think I'll go to the leaders, and I'll start off with Councillor James.
Thank you, Leader. I'd add to that Kington already is a walking centre. It was named by The Guardian, I think, to be the fourth, or The Observer, I think it was, the fourth best walking centre in England or Great Britain. I can't remember now, but anyway, that's it. The high street regeneration and the need for something being done about it being a narrow medieval street makes it very difficult for shopping, and there needs to be something done. And I think there is quite a fair majority of people now who see the way forward, and that is recognised in this particular plan. Further than that, I mean, we wait to see. The proof of the pudding is in the eating, and we look forward to seeing something happen. People locally have been very sceptical about plans because they've had so many done over the years, over the last 15, 20 years. Advantage West Midlands Regional Assembly have commissioned consultants after consultants, spending, well, we estimate nearly £1 million over the years on consultants. How much could that have been done if it had actually been put into projects within the town? But let's hope that we see some improvements. Thank you.
Absolutely right, Councillor James. Councillor Lester.
Thank you. Just reflecting on a point that Councillor Harvey made, I think we would like to see these as living documents, because, you know, proposals have been put forward to address certain things, and some of those are very welcome from my perspective in Bromyard and other places, other market towns that we all know and love. But it has to be a working document, I think, and improved upon, because the situation moves and changes, and I think that's the right way of thinking about the documents. But, you know, we welcome the fact that the approach has been made, and it will serve as a really useful way, provided it is a living document, as I've just said, to get funding. And the government has been very generous with funding for Hereford, and so with these packages in place, you know, it would be really helpful if we could benefit from government funding to achieve some of these aims. Might not come to achieve all of the aims that are listed, but this is a step in the right direction so that we can benefit from all the funding that the government will provide, because they acknowledge that market towns, these service centres that are crucial to people, not just living in the town, but in the rural areas where they provide services for those people, are essential. And, you know, long live our market towns. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Leader. I don't quite know whether I got this quite right. I was pleased to hear Councillor Harvey. She seems like Councillor Davis to be doing everything right today. Mentioning the economy and employment and growth and job opportunities, bringing wealth to these market towns. That's what I thought this whole plan was about, not about swings and roundabouts. So this is what I got mowed down with the report, so I've just prepared some notes. This report, quite rightly, mentions the very important role our rural villages play in the county's economy. My own ward provides, as I've said many times, in excess of 4,000 well-paid jobs, and at a population larger than some of the market towns. The report also states, page 25, that much improved infrastructure is required in and around our market towns. And that is what local businesses have been asking for many years. Also to include, if I may say, the city of Hereford. The two independents fully support this proposal. We also propose that a fast-track planning section is formed to solely deal with business-associated applications only and help cut out the red tape and speed up the business modernization. It's high time we attracted a few larger national companies into the county to help to endorse our reputation. Give our present businesses and any new business an efficient infrastructure system, a skilled workforce and houses, and they will deliver a prosperous local economy. We've got the business skill out there to do it. We are lucky to have one of the most beautiful counties in the country. In the present circumstances, in my opinion, businesses could be attracted into the county provided the appropriate services are readily available. We should therefore commence a nationwide campaign to attract the right type of employers into the county. After all, it's highly irresponsible to keep building more and more houses if we are not able to provide the secure, well-paid jobs to help keep our many skilled and talented young people in the county. Thinking about it, I can't see any reason as to why any of the market towns have not have not expanded economically in recent years, because if they'd put forward any proposals that were of a business and plan back in, this council would have supported them. One thing for sure, we have got to get this county moving economically. A prosperous local economy should be one of our top priorities. Thank you, folks.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Matthews. I think you've hit a number of nails with the same hammer with this. We obviously talking about the vision for 2050, what sort of county we want to be. As administration, we're going around the market towns, talking to local businesses, and these are certainly your ideas and thoughts will go into the mix.
Leader, Leader, and you've discussed it, and I've discussed it with you. You know, you can't have all these luxuries in our market towns and all the lovely things we want unless it's driven by the local economy and with a successful and prosperous local business. They generate the wealth for the county, and that's what we should be seeking to achieve.
Yes, it's certainly a partnership we should be working to develop with businesses. Yeah. Councillor Fagan.
Yeah, thank you. The Greens certainly welcome this and the support for market towns. They are a crucial part of our Herefordshire landscape and important hubs. As a former council employee who was part of the market town support network, I feel that market towns have also fallen victim to austerity, and looking at the proposals for Ross, it feels like we've lost 15 years, and so it's really good to see some investment coming back into the market towns. And I really hope that there will be strong officer support, which was withdrawn largely in 2009. Those market towns really need strong officer support, and they need good, strong funding teams to help actually lever down the funding that's going to be crucial to getting these proposals up and running. You know, obviously market failure is an indicator that it can't just be left up to the market. We're going to have to invest public money in this, and we certainly look forward to seeing that investment bearing fruit in the market towns. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Fagan, and finally Councillor Jimman.
Thank you, Leader. Well, Independence for Herefordshire, clearly we're very pleased to see this across the county. This is the way forward. Undoubtedly, it's nice to see the emphasis perhaps being moved away from Hereford City, which all too often we get told and assailed by. It's all happening in Hereford. Here's action, here's activity. And of course, I'm going to put the usual plea in that don't forget the rural community. And as has been said during this discussion, these market towns service those rural communities. They're very important to the rural communities, the villages. And as you only too well know, in my particular area, we haven't got a market town. So the village area is very important. We look to see how we will work with those in future plans. But these are very positive. They are iterative, as is the word of the moment. In other words, they will be continuing, they will be developed, they will be followed through, and tracking them is going to be really important to ensure they are efficient in how they're played out and how they work. But the fundamental principle is no question that they have a value here, and they will be turned into action and activity. And that is what we want to see happening. So very much a support. I was a little worried at one point when I heard Councillor talking about tourism in the 7th century, when the word was only invented in the 1770s. But we won't worry about these sort of accuracies of history if we can get the accuracy of economy.
Thank you, Councillor Chairman. I think this has been discussed well. I think I'm going to move on to the recommendation.
Chair.
Excuse me, Chair.
Councillor Howells has had his hand up very politely for a little while.
Okay, Councillor, nice and quick, please, if possible.
Yes, sir, certainly can. I have been listening, and here, I'm sure those people who diminish COVID, hope they never experience how much it does sap your energy and concentration. Those who've had it will know just how it feels. I would normally have something to say, but I really do appreciate and thank Councillor Harvey and Chowns for saying good things on behalf of Ledbury, and equally hope that this becomes a living document and we can see some of the great aspirations in it delivered. Sorry I missed the chance when you spoke earlier, but I'm sure you understand. Thanks again.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'll put the recommendation to Cabinet. It's in the papers. Point C needs to be changed slightly, so it should refer to the Corporate Director for Economy and Environment, following consultation with the Section 151 officer, having the authority to implement the above recommendations. So with that one change, all in favour? Thank you very much. So I'd like to thank everyone for attending. The next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, 28th of April 2022, and please can I have confirmation that the live stream has stopped?